Brother Ron, and welcome to We All Be News Radio and TV, the news-free Dixie for the 21st century. Got the man of the moment, the one and only, the most honorable of honorables, the future mayor of Memphis. I give you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, stars and laymen, Judge Joe Brown. How you doing, sir?
How you doing, young brother?
Oh, this is good. I'm just warming it up for you, opening act. But I gotta tell people, because you don't do a good job of promoting your product. This stuff is amazing. Well, it makes everything taste better. Trust me, I had some horrible.
Oh, you got you some. It's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good. It works. It's like I'm not getting paid for this.
I said it was good. Didn't it?
Now it is good. I'm not getting paid for this, folks. This stuff is good. It is good. Thank you, Judge, for this sauce, and thank you for your time. How you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing well. I just left a meeting with my committee about the mayoral thing, and we were setting some things up just in case it comes to pass about getting black banks in here, getting some black finance, getting some black construction for the general middle class and small businessman, irrespective of race around here, getting some seed money from the city that has gone to certain select interest in the past invariably, so nobody else can get any play. You know, the people, see, we don't have an income tax in Tennessee. Most of the revenue is generated by property tax, business tax, and sales tax. And the sales tax is regressive, so the people that are in the middle and at the bottom wind up paying a disproportionate share and get absolutely nothing back from it, because the gravy goes to the people that are controlling the city council and county commissions, board of aldermen, depending upon where it is. But this is a city race for 2023. And that's got to change so this place can get big. We've got to do something about using the free water flow from the Mississippi River that isn't going anywhere for a few million years to put in some hydroelectric plants, some turbines, and we can get some green free energy. Hi there, Miss Dana. Yeah, it's sometimes all about money. Sometimes it's about character too. A lot of things go into this makeup. It's a well-balanced thing. Now, see, money, when it gets brought into play without character to guide how it's spent, you can get hell. But that's what we've had. We have very few, well, actually nothing that the city of Memphis has done in a long, long time for the middle class or for the small entrepreneur, the small businessman. And we need to do something about that. We need to be dealing with civilianizing the police department on the model of the Pentagon, where you have the civilian Secretary of Defense, civilian Secretary of the Army, Navy, etc., Air Force. We need to have a civilian director. We still have that office, so this clown Strickland that's in there appointed the first chief in 40-some years, and the chief is civil service, not subject to political control or removal at the mayor's pleasure. Civil service, but we can still have a director, so we have a civilian top of the line counterpart to the civilian Secretary of Defense. Each department, uniform patrol, traffic, sex crimes, property crimes, homicide, will have a civilian sub-chief. And instead of having an ineffective police review board, we will have a very effective civilian control of the police department, which is something we need. See, public peace, dignity, and order is supposed to come from the community itself. And when the community lacks the character, inclination, or is more disposed to something else, such that it does not exercise that kind of control over itself, then you bring the police to the forefront of being the primary source of public peace, dignity, and order. And oftentimes, what happens is because they don't live in the immediate community, even if they live in suburban Memphis, they tend to function more as zookeepers or forestry rangers who keep the animals under control and from getting unruly and spilling over to where they live or where the people live that they perceive that they're beholden to. So police departments are direct barometers of the political realities in the area, and that is not good for the people of Memphis to have a reality like we have. We have some fine policemen, policewomen too, but we don't have a thing where the community itself is responsive for its own public peace, dignity, and order. And it's neglected. And the thing about neglecting the bottom is the bottom can get around. They have automobiles and transportation, and they can overflow into where you live. So it behooves everybody to see that the bottom is not too bottom and that there is opportunity, potential, and character there. We've had entirely too much violence, and the solution is not gun control because the guns aren't going anywhere. Right. But like this problem we had with the sushi guy at the Kroger going off and shooting all those people up, it's just absolutely a disgrace that nobody was armed to stop that. And recent Supreme Court decisions have said unless the police are actually there, they have no obligation to protect you. That's not their job. They can draw the chalk around the body and solve the crime, but they can't stop the crime. So that's up to the citizenry. And we need to do something about actualizing the potential that Memphis has as a place with unlimited green energy through hydroelectric power, no smog aversion layer, being the terminus for European barge traffic that gets loaded up in Europe, put on transports, dropped off in New Orleans, towed up to Memphis, unloaded at President's Island where the customs investigation goes through. And we ought to have something that we have not, because our elected officials have been too venal. We have put them in office to represent us, and they don't. The other thing is we can't do anything about it until we get some legitimately fair, square voting machines, which the Justice Department under 3 administrations has said voting machines are totally corrupt. In fact, 13 years ago, they put the money up to replace every one of them. But for some reason, the black Democrat dominated county commission has had at least 3 representatives who have been dead set against replacing machines. I wonder why. And now we have a problem with the city council having gotten involved, but some factions seem to be dead set against having a paper receipt trail to show who voted so that there can be an audit to determine if there's a fair election. Now that's got to change, and they need to be embarrassed. There's another thing too that we have a problem with. Most recently, the U.S. Supreme Court has reiterated an application of the 14th and 15th Amendments that go back to the 1870s, wherein they were applied to corporations that are fictional persons. And they've said that corporations cannot be discriminated against when it comes to political participation. So what happens is they get what they want, even if it's a small, closely held corporation, and they can donate back to the elected officials who, if they declare the receipt of the funds for political campaign purposes and declare that they've been converted to personal usage, if the political official declares it tax-wise and pays the taxes, no harm, no foul. So that is not good for us. There's somebody on one of these unsolicited phone solicitation things. I make
we get a lot of that. All right, Joe, You talk
Somebody
about
solicits me, I won't buy it anymore. Go ahead.
you talked about working with like community policing, but also, people got this thing about you and women leaders. What's your take on the new police chief, sister? I mean, what do you think about
She
her?
got fired for corruption in Atlanta, got questionable in North Carolina. Why did we hire her? I think the reason she got hired is somebody was trying to make a hit with the women. I don't have any problem with women being in charge of something. I'm not going to follow one personally because I am who I am. I'm an alpha male. And, but I don't think we need to just bring in somebody because they're black, gay, female, just because. You need to show the expertise. And we've had enough problem with corruption, particularly in the DA's office that does have a female DA. And the first time I encountered her back in the 90s personally was when she tried to sneak a case into my courtroom, and she gave up. Well, she never specified what the drugs were, but this person was supposed to get 1 year up front, unsupervised probation, judicial diversion, record expunged after 1 year, small fine, and the female co-defendant was supposed to have the charges dropped. Well, I had the hearing. I reset it because I still didn't hear anything about drugs, and I had a felony amount of Schedule II drugs involved that Metro Narco had been working on for some years and quite a bit of money, and that's not supposed to be what happened. So that's the first time I encountered her corruption. She was in Judge Daly's courtroom. That was Division 5. And she wanted to transfer it into me and me hear it like a sucker and go along with it, but I didn't. So I set the thing for trial. But that's the way of it. So we need to have that stopped. Now, that aside, we haven't had a chief of police in 41 years. And the reason was because of venality and corruption in the police department. See, the director, who we've had for 41 years, last chief was under the former late mayor and pretty decent circuit court judge, Wyatt Chandler, was that the chief is civil service and is answerable to nobody but themselves. And that limits political control. And one thing we need in this day and time in the 21st century is a responsive police department that is answerable to the political process. So I don't see why that happens. So I'm going to offset it. It might be a woman who becomes the director. I don't know. Let's see who's most qualified and most willing to work with the civilian population and setting up a structure where the police department is truly representative. That would also
we don't have
go
police
along with something. Hold on, just one more point. Working with the juveniles to get them out of this corrupt, privatized, exclusively profit-making entity known as the Memphis and Shelby County Juvenile Court. To get it away from that long-term corruption, we need a situation where the police department can enter into a contractual agreement with the parent or parents and the child and defray preferment of charges pending the child going through counseling along with the parent and getting a handle on developing character in that child. So if the character is developed and this promise shown, then there are no profit charges, and that's the end of it, rather than sending it down to juvenile court where nothing happens but a complete wreck, where profit is the orientation and corruption of the child is good because that generates future business for juvenile court. The elected judge down there is functionally just a CEO for a private entity where his salary is nominally paid by the taxpayers, and that's not good. We had a judge in there who was selected out of Vice. He was captain over Vice Squad in 1963. And from 1982 to 2006, he couldn't hear any cases because he dropped out of the 6th grade, and the Tennessee Supreme Court said his educational deficiencies made him unqualified to understand the arguments of counsel, so people would be deprived of their right to be represented. So he privatized everything to get around that. He should have been compelled to resign years and years and years ago because the law is clear. a judicial officer, which includes all judges of any jurisdiction who qualify for a ballot to run for a nominal political office, and he qualified for mayor twice, must resign, and he did not. So from that point, he should never have been allowed to sit. It was so bad. I remember I got to the bottom of it after filing a bunch of habeas corpus petitions against him as a lawyer. I had it as a judge who had appellate jurisdiction 1991 on a series of habeas corpus petitions brought for 240, 250 inmates by the sheriff's department. People who were non-compos mentis, but who had been in there for more than a year, couldn't be hooked up with their guardians because they weren't competent because of juvenile court trying to make profit off of them. So we got the discovery, and there's some things that need to be done. And if the DA was on their job, those things would result in some prosecutions. We need another Tennessee Waltz episode or two. But since that won't happen, the mayor can sick the city attorney's office on somebody and proffer the events to TBI, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and perhaps we can get some things cleaned up that way. So, elaborated upon, we've got too much corruption in this city and too many folk, black officials who are in position now to do something about it, say, well, they've been doing it for years. It's our turn to get the gravy. No, it's your turn to deliver good, honest government. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't.
I definitely want to touch on that. You said Tennessee Waltz, but also, so we don't have a police chief. We have police director. That's the difference, right?
That's what we've had for 41 years.
Not a police chief.
We have both. See, we've had, that's one of the things. Claude Armour was police director, and there was a police chief when King was killed.
Okay.
See, so what happened is Wyatt Chandler, who was the mayor at the time, was running into difficulties with the police department being responsive to the political arm. Remember Shannon Street and all of that? Yeah. Okay, so Chandler, when the mayor, the chief of police, retired, he just didn't appoint another one. So we've had a director who sits at the pleasure of the mayor. And when Doc Harrington got elected in 1991, he appointed a series of directors. They had the working understanding that if things go wrong and you don't clean it up, then you'll be gone and you'll find out about it on the evening news. And he went through quite a few of them until he found one that said, I believe. And as a consequence, at one point, I saw a couple of clients of mine. It were senior citizens. I was visiting Memphis. I was doing the show. And they were out on the sidewalk at a stop sign with a tray with an urn on it. And I said, what's going on? They spoke and said, oh, we've got coffee and donuts for the good officers. And the police had improved their relations with the community to the point where that was happening. Now, since then, things have gone south. And I think that's because there was not enough influence or attention paid to the police department is for the good of the citizens. And it must be responsive to those citizens. It cannot look at itself as a series of zookeepers or game wardens who are keeping the wild animals under control. And we have to understand that. We've got to do something about manning up the community where we interject masculine principles, where it is the responsibility of a man to make where he lives a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, a decent economy, morality, and ethics, where public peace, dignity, and order is sacred. And it's the community's duty to impose that and cooperate with the police when there is an egregious transgression that needs to be addressed. Men are supposed to be brave and courageous after when it becomes necessary, even though they're ordinarily peaceful. Now, we don't have that right now. It's gone to hell, and these young boys are out of control. They do not understand the duty to be preachers of public peace, dignity, and order. And we've got entirely too much community violence simply because you don't have the masculine element where you are under control and it's your job to make where you live a better place, not sell poison to your neighbors, rob your neighbors, assault your neighbors, murder your neighbors, burglarize your neighbors, rape your neighbors. That's unexcused. We've got 28,000 untested rape kits, a lot of victims who have not had justice, and a DA's office that is hooked up with a private attorney who was a former U.S. attorney, who was hooked up with a deal through the city council to pay out quite a few million to a New York firm to take a few more years to test these kits. And TBI has come in many occasions and said, we'll test them in a month for free. See, that kind of thing has got to stop. Nora Jackson got her conviction set aside because some black female investigators that had complained about being treated in a racist fashion at the DA's office were fired because they dared to complain. But they had gotten the kit tested, and when they sent it off for results, it determined that the victim, Ms. Jackson's mother, had sex with someone within an hour or so of being killed, and they identified where the DNA came from. Well, the Supreme Court reversed the conviction. That was on an amicus curiae submission. So that kind of thing happens, and that's inexcusable. We've got to stop this. Memphis can get nowhere as long as it is a center of corruption and venality.
I got to ask you, because you talked about Tennessee Waltz, and Tennessee Waltz was a government stain. They were trying to get Harrington, but they ended up getting everybody else.
Harrington's an honest man.
Yeah, I'm saying, I tell people,
powers that be.
Yeah, he wasn't corrupt. He might have been greedy, but he wasn't corrupt.
4 or 5 times what they paid him as a mayor because he was on these board of directors for major corporations.
But they did get the former mayor of Atlanta. They said they had a connect. Yes. But he went to federal prison, Bruce Campbell. I think his name was Bruce Campbell or something. Okay.
And remember, that's where our chief came from. She got fired from Atlanta for being corrupt and questioned in North Carolina for being corrupt.
So I didn't hear that part. Okay.
Wow. Brings her here. She's got some things to answer, and nobody's asked her to answer them. Wow, we got a woman.
I mean, Bill Campbell. That's the guy name. But he went to Club Fed. But him and Harrington had the same bag man, but Harrington too smart for them guys. And he, like you say, he wasn't corrupt.
He wasn't corrupt.
Now he had an ego, but he wasn't
let me tell you things Harrington did. Most of the people are too young, but back in to remember this, but in the 80s, they put in Mud Island development. It was really upscale. But there is a rule, local ordinance, and a law that says when you develop an area, if the population density is above a certain point, or the anticipated density is above a certain point, the developer has to donate part of the land that he has the property rights to, that are part of the development, to widening the streets, and widen the streets at his expense.
Right.
Well, to begin with, the city of Memphis said, no, we will take the property. We will pay you for the loss of the use of the property to widen the road that you're supposed to widen on your own, and we'll build the roads. Then what they did is that bridge, now known as the A.W. Willis Bridge, when it went across, there was a right-angle stop sign. Well, somebody sold that corner to a private developer. Somebody says former Atlanta Mayor Bill Campbell.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Well, the city sold that corner. Now, get this, we sold a corner to a private developer for a little over 10 grand. And in a few months, he sells it back to the city for multiple $1 million. And then they build a yield lane there, and now it's a roundabout. See, that's the kind of corruption that used to go on.
Yeah, Drew, I got to ask this too. I got to get your opinion on, you talk about corruption. We talk about Tennessee Waltz. State Senator Katrina Robinson was facing 48 counts, but she's facing like 4 or 5 counts now. Could be facing up to 20 years for allegedly taking some money that wasn't hers or some unethical practices.
No, she converted political contributions, didn't declare them, allegedly took vacations and stuff, things she got convicted of. They had a whole bunch of counts. The feds just shotgun the approach. They got convictions on several of them. Now, the guidelines, federal sentencing guidelines, have a category talking about violation of public trust. It's more complex than that, but that's what it amounts to, which allows the trial judge to deviate upwards. They need to put every crooked somebody in this state deep up under a jail and stop that.
Yes,
Tennessee has some progressive law. It is in a place where everything ought to be everything. Memphis in particular is located where this ought to be the Chicago for the 21st century, as a center of trade, distribution, and manufacture. And people need not worry about minimum wage at Mickey D's. They ought to be debating on whether $86.17 and $92.14 an hour, and becoming journeyman tradesmen.
Oh, Judge. Yeah.
So she got convicted. Somebody
4 or 5. She had 48 counts. Like they put it down to 4 or 5 counts. But is she facing 20 years still, Judge? How will you handle something like that?
Well, it's up to the federal sentencing guidelines. That's up to the judge. And by
20
the way,
years?
Jackass in Chief in the White House, John B. Stennis and Strom Thurmond, et al., and Byrd are responsible to a great extent for those sentencing guidelines. So the guy in the White House right now, they got so much black support, he set up what the judge is going to probably apply. Well, we'll have to apply.
But Judge, would you give her 20 years though? I mean, I'm just looking at
not really. There are not any options.
Oh, so she's gonna have to get almost 20 years, you saying?
It's not saying she will, but there's some sentencing guidelines, and state criminal courts too, or ones that exercise criminal jurisdiction. There is a multi-page fine print checklist you have to go through, and you got to ask the question: did or did not so and so and so and so? No. Did not so and so? No. Did not? Yes. And then when you go through, you add them up, and the sentencing guidelines tell you what you're supposed to impose as a sentence.
Well, I mean, they were kind of overzealous. You said a shotgun approach. They had 48 counts originally, I think. Something like 48 counts.
Yeah, a lot of them got dismissed, and I think 5 of them went to trial. But, see, the sentencing guidelines, the judge has to justify if he deviates upward, and justify a whole lot if it deviates down. Now, what she did is inexcusable. If she got, I couldn't tell if there was any violation of due process of law, but if there was none.
But what say she was doing the culture? But I'm saying, is a cultural thing when you get in that office in Nashville where you just doing as the Romans do?
No, I mean, it's been a long tradition.
Yeah.
Tennessee has had a lot of corruption, and I won't detail who.
Right.
Since at the time I was practicing law, but some of the black elected officials told me, Joe, what the hell? White folk been doing it for years. It's our turn to get the gravy. My response was, no, it's not. It's your attention. It's your responsibility to deliver good government.
But yeah, I remember the Tennessee Waltz thing. I used to be a church member with Lois DeBerry. She went to my childhood church. I mean, she got a $200 gift and she spent it at the casino or something like that. These guys would get, like Roscoe Dixon seemed like he was a decent guy too. For what I know, Roscoe.
Well, they convicted him. John Ford too.
Yeah, these guys, I mean, like, but they was getting caught for some, like, I'm taking money at the Waffle House type of stuff. I don't know what was going on.
Well, let me tell you about this, for example. One former client of mine, I won't mention his name, he did not get caught up in it. But what they did is they gave him $2,000 in cash. He called me up and said, should I do it? I said, yeah. Technically, it's against the law, but do it anyway. Take every bill you got, Xerox it front and back. And what you do is do not trust your treasurer. You do it. You go fill out the forms. You put a copy of the Xerox and you affix the copy of the Xerox front and back of every bill, and you declare them on a disclosure, and you walk that over tomorrow to the election commission and file it. So when they came to go jack him up, he said, "Oh yeah, here, I claimed it." And they said, "Well, damn." And he said, "Thanks for the contribution."
Hey, everybody, this is Brother Ron. I am asking you all to do me a big favor. Think about supporting the We All Be movement. Your donation is tax deductible. The We All Be Group Incorporated is a recognized 501c3. And I'm just asking you all because I want to keep on bringing y'all quality work through the way that I know how to do best. And I'm going to sing my praises and toot my horn. A lot of y'all were not hip to Dick Gregory until Brother Ron brought him on the We All Be platform, until that jingle review we did. Y'all seen another side of Judge Joe Brown, and Judge Joe Brown's message has been amplified. But it was We All Be that brought Judge Joe Brown to y'all back in 2014. And so many others. And we covered so many things. So help us out so we can help you all. Peace.